Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Constitutional Review Committee meeting on Wednesday, the 28th of January at 6:30 in the Council Chamber. If there is a fire alarm this evening, it is a genuine fire alarm, and everyone please use the appropriate exits. And we'll meet on Mill Hill, the top there, because there are no sort of tests planned this evening. It would be a genuine fire alarm. So thanks. Before we start the meeting, we'll just go around and ask everyone to introduce themselves so that anybody who's watching online can actually come on and say who they are. Phil, would you like to lead off first, please?
Yeah, Councillor King from the Kidworth Ward. Thanks.
Michael Rickman, Neville Ward. Councillor Grafton Road from the Broughton and Sutton Ward.
I'm Leah Mickleborough. I'm the Head of Democratic Services, Elections and Monitoring Officer.
Sarah Hamilton, Democratic Services Officer.
Peter Elliott, Ward Councillor, Thurmby and Houghton Ward.
Amanda Burrow, Thurmby and Houghton Ward.
And I'm Phil Knowles from the Great Bedford and Arden Ward, and I'm chairing the meeting this evening. So first item on the agenda, as I have it, is apologies for absence. I have one apology, which is from Councillor Asher, who's unwell this evening. So she won't be here with us, I'm afraid. I don't think there's any other apologies been received at all. No, okay. Item 2 on the agenda is declaration of members' interests. Are there any members' interests at all? Anything anyone wishes or needs to mention? No, okay. We then have item 3, which is the Constitutional Review Committee from the 1st to the 10th, 2025, the draft minutes. They have been circulated as part of the agenda pack. Is everyone happy with them? Are there any points that anyone wants to raise? Or are you happy that I sign them as an accurate record? Everyone happy? Okay. Okay. Somebody like to move that? Councillor Grafton Reid, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favour? Anyone against? That is carried. I will duly sign them. Thanks, Michael. Noted it, yeah. Right. Item 4 on the agenda, development of a member support policy, which is on page number 5 and runs through to page 16. This is quite a wide-ranging report. I think it's basically saying that as a council, we're not doing a bad job collectively. There's discussions about more training opportunities and the importance of that detail being shared with members, and also there's some touching in there about the member locations and should that be in the support policy, and also the other areas of general support. So what I'm going to do, if everyone's happy, is I'll ask Leah, would you like to just give us some background information on this, please, Leah?
Of course, thank you, Chair. So you remember following the presentation at the last meeting, apologies to councillors not there, it was agreed that you wanted me to go away and do some research and also survey councillors on developing a support policy. And I think, you know, some of the debates we've had in the past few weeks is what are we trying to do this for? And it's really to articulate what you as members can reasonably expect from the council to help you. And I appreciate LGR is moving on quickly. There won't be a point in time in a couple of years where this council isn't existing, but you might see in this report that there's not many councils that have this sort of defined policy. There's emerging work from the LGA which says that councils need to improve the support that they provide to members and be much clearer around what help they need, especially in light of rising intimidation, harassment and so on. That councillors are experiencing. So having a policy which sets out this is where you can get help and this is what you can expect, it seems quite helpful and might serve as a role model to any future unitary as well. So if I may, Chair, what I suggest we do is perhaps go through section by section, because against each section I put some recommendations. At your last meeting you discussed quite a bit about attending meetings and the option of allowing members to attend virtually so they can participate. And we had this actually with last week's scrutiny meeting where we had a couple of members watching online because they couldn't get into the council offices. And actually what they ended up doing was emailing other councillors saying, oh, can you ask this on my behalf? When actually they were sitting there, they could have joined the meeting and asked that and just not taken part in the voting. So that seems a sensible thing to me to suggest. They can still feel included, although legally they can't
If I could
vote.
just say that one particular councillor did speak to me yesterday about this and said, look, you know, I know I can't vote, but I could have come in online. And I said, well, I don't see any reason why you should. Just quite honestly, if a councillor's there and wants to make a point, why not? Oh, do you want to come in?
Are there any legal restrictions stopping us joining in the debate in that situation? And the rule about not voting is because you're not present in the chamber. Is there any likelihood in the near future that the government might change that under review? Because I believe there is.
So at the last meeting, I'd said the government were looking to change this. That hasn't changed at all since we've not had any further updates around that. I do speak to counterparts and some of the peers that speak to the government on these matters, and our next meeting is tomorrow. So if it is changing, I'll hear them. But at the moment, I've got no indication that's the case. There is no bar to people contributing virtually to a meeting and a discussion. They just can't take part in voting.
Yeah, thanks. So look, just to pick up that point, so obviously I'm on one of the LJ boards and stuff, and kind of got a bit more insight. There isn't any movement at all on that front, despite what the government said in response to the national consultation that it carried out. That there doesn't seem to be any appetite. They would have to devote some parliamentary time to put it through because it's primary legislation, I think. And you've seen all sorts of issues at the moment, and so with other legislation that's not going through or going through and then having to be revisited fairly shortly afterwards. So I'm not sure that would be quite a big thing for the government to put through, and there's a lot of resistance to that. I actually am not in favour of it personally. I think it's people being able. I think if you're going to meet the problem is that whilst technically it's possible, there are a lot of issues with, especially if you're making sensitive decisions as to how do you know that there is no one else present or no one else can hear what's taking place, particularly if it's a private session of the council. So I think that's there are some issues there about that, or there isn't someone whispering in someone's ear to say, oh, you shouldn't do that, you should, you know, and influencing that person's decision. And that particularly relates to regulatory decisions. I would be very concerned about that. But in terms of meeting times, yeah, I think the council's been, well, it's been an evening council since I've been on it, and that's a few years now. It was an evening council before that. It's always been in the evening. I think there will be changes in the future once whatever the unitary process is. Personally, can't see much point in changing it. It'll be for the new council to decide what times it wants to hold meetings. By its very nature, that a new unitary is going to have to hold meetings during the day for some of its committees. Can't be all done in the evening. Just what isn't, it will be in physically impossible. So I think that's where it's going to go, and I think it's probably be more helpful for the council to kind of, and other councils across Leicester and Leicester and Rutland, to kind of offer guidance to anyone who's thinking of standing in any forthcoming elections, whenever they may happen, that actually this is what you need to think about, is that you will be required to spend time in the day and in the evening working on either casework or attending meetings. And it isn't just something you can pitch up to and, you know, and wing it, basically. I'm not saying anyone does here, but you know what I'm saying. All right. So I think that's something, and I think that's be much more.
Yeah, I'll just ask you a question.
Yeah.
When you said about the sensitivity, I don't understand that fully. Are you saying no to people dialing in to address the
Oh,
committee?
no,
Or
no,
just the
no,
voting?
no. I'm just.
Just the voting?
I think if, so for example, take last week or even this evening's meeting, if someone said, look, I'd love to be on the meeting, I can't get in because I'm
Yeah.
wherever I am. Can I dial in the meeting? So yeah, I mean, I've done it at county with cabinet. There was some response I had to put in the other few weeks ago to something, and I didn't go to county hall for my 10 minutes of banter with the cabinet. I got sent a link, and when it was the moment on the agenda, I was added in and appeared on some big screen in the room, which would have been delightful. I mean, that's what they do. That's a fairly regular occurrence.
But we've done it here as well.
And we have, and I think
Regular.
that's the point. I think what we haven't done is we haven't embedded it as normal practice in every meeting that we have. And I think it's more appropriate to kind of scrutiny and cabinet meetings probably, and maybe some of the regulatory ones as well, where if a member wants to attend, they can speak on screen. I think that's something we need to probably, that practice I think would be a good thing to do. But not if you're the decision maker. You need to be in the room. But if you're a ward member, you want to comment on a planning application, do you need to be there in the room to actually have your 5 minutes in front of the committee, or can you just, you know, I think to me that would be quite a good use of technology to enable that.
Agreed.
It's same. I don't know the legalities, but again, do residents need to attend in person for those meetings? But again, that might, so there's that as well. So I think there's some bits of that which might work quite well. Yeah, and to say, I think the other thing is just the more broad point about just making clear to people who are thinking about whether existing councillors or not, whether they're thinking about, you know, whenever there's this new unitary, and maybe it's a little early yet, of how much time, and the fact that they will have to devote time to meetings in the day and stuff like that, because it's just not going to be humanly possible if they're elected and all that sort of thing, all things being equal. And I think that's the thing, and it is quite time consuming. So anyway, I thought I'd just add that in basically.
I think that's, so obviously what I'll suggest is if this all gets sort of collated, taken to cabinet, then we can pull it all together, then push it all to full council for information if it needs to be enacted. But I think that's, we can make those the first point clear about the, you know, making sort of embedding it that people can actually come in and use the technology, sensible support. I think that's a way of doing it. If we can do that, and also,
I mean, just in relation to Councillor Page, I know she couldn't join on a laptop last week because she didn't actually have it,
no,
because it's getting repaired.
she's got it back.
Oh, she got it back.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, she got it back now. But last week she hadn't, and I know that, and that's why she was sending messages. But anyway,
I
thank you.
saw Councillor Page yesterday walking around with the.
She has mentioned that. She has mentioned that.
Yeah, exactly. Lovely. Okay, Councillor
Chair,
Reid.
Chair, as it's written here, for brevity, for the repeat, suggesting we do a trial, and I support the recommendation. You've done the work. I do support the trial. We have various pieces like the Attendance and Meetings Act, where you're allowed to close meeting, your public attendance or otherwise. So you can make that clear in the agenda, which parts will be closed, and schedule the meeting appropriately so you can close it without losing people at the wrong time. So all of those mechanisms exist. I really think it would be a step up for us to be able to do this for exactly the reasons that Councillor King's explained there. And as you said, if you're going to make a decision being in the room, okay, if at this stage of the development, fine. In the future, I'm sure that will change. And I'm looking forward to seeing, you know, people enjoy when we have the new unit, imagine, and the offices are then in Hinckley, for example. We'll see office members from over here travelling across there. Yeah, that's what we're going to look forward to, because it certainly won't be. So you see the direction of travel. May as well just get on with it.
Yeah, thank you for that.
So please do the trial.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, I can't see how we can start any meeting after 6:30. I mean, we have had meetings where it's been gone 10 o'clock when we've left here. So is it going to be gone 11 o'clock when we leave here? So I'd be against being any later than that. And I think what both of you, the councillors, have said, I agree with most of what's been said.
That's good. We're getting straight back on that. So, are you, everybody happy with the first point that's been? Oh, sorry, my apologies.
Just going to say that I agree with what Councillor King says, amazingly. I think there should be a crib sheet or something handed out to everybody who applies or puts the name forward to be a councillor, telling them exactly what's involved. I think we lead on to this further on when you're talking about things for councillors, the councillor compacts, which I read from Durham. I don't think we're told enough of what it's going to be like when you first start. Certainly when I first started, even longer ago than you, there was nothing. You just got dumped in the middle of being a councillor, and you had no idea how much time there was going to be involved, or when it was going to happen, or anything. I think something like that, if you could send it out with the application form, would be really helpful.
I mean, when I first got elected in 1987, I walked in the gate, gave me a purple book and said, read that. Yeah. Yeah.
If I may, I mean, I'm in a slightly odd position at the moment that we're beginning our service planning through to 31st of March 2027. But I think particularly in the areas I look after, we're going to be heavily influenced by what happens with LGR. And we don't know, for example, who will be leading the work to implement a new authority. And so we're sort of mapping out scenarios, and I'm working with colleagues across the county on, but if you do it, or you do it, or you do it. I think one of the things we are distinctly putting into our plans and thinking about carefully is those 2027 elections and how we prepare candidates, whether it's parish and town councillors or whether it's councillors for the shadow authority, you know, what briefing events we run in advance. So if you're interested, this is what it might look like. It's going to be really difficult for shadow authority members because they will get to shape what their own destiny is to a degree, but actually the extent to which they can do that, and it's a land of opportunity in a way, is sometimes difficult to grasp, but it's very much on our radar. It's a really good point.
Okay. Next one I've got here is expenses and allowances. Some clarification on that. Here again, do you want?
Yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one, this, because I do realise members might always want changes to expense allowances, but we've gone through that quite a bit over the past year. I think generally the survey just showed that members weren't familiar with what they could and couldn't claim. So actually, primarily, you probably need to do some work to help you understand as councillors what you can and can't do. And you might see my note yesterday, we'll also be doing some training on the new system that will be coming, and fingers crossed it will be something councillors like more than what we currently use.
Anybody any comments on this one at all? Okay, Bill, please.
Yeah, I mean, if I can just go back to the last point, going back for a few years, we did used to run cabinet at 5 o'clock, and then it went to 5:30. So we have previously had meetings earlier in the afternoon, but you know, each administration chooses when it does that. Expenses and allowances. Yeah, I think this is a thing that has. I mean, I think you've got to go back to when elections happened, and really, I don't. So when I first got elected, there was a lot of induction sessions. That's 2007, and one of them was about this is the scheme, this is how it works, this is how you got to do it. I'm not sure that's happened since I can remember. It certainly didn't happen in, you know, and forgive me. I think it should, and I think it should be, you know, literally walking people through. This is what you've got to do. This is how, and so I think it's kind of. But again, that goes back to the first point about making people understand. Well, after you get elected, you've got to be able to attend training sessions, because otherwise you're not going to know what you're supposed to be doing. And I think for some people, probably some of the challenge stems from then, because they weren't perhaps necessarily expecting to get elected. I mean, I wasn't in 2007, so you know. That's a long story. So, but the point is that, you know, if you're not expecting to get elected, you do, and then you've suddenly got to change a lot of things. So this is one of the things. But in terms of the current system, the iTrent system, I mean, I'm okay with it actually, because I had actually used that before a long time ago. In another occupation, so I wasn't unused to it, but I appreciate that for some colleagues it's. But then you want to try using. I mean, you know, Leicestershire has a different scheme. It's different system, and that has its own foibles and as well. So there's not perfect software system. Yeah, but I mean, if it can be a bit more user friendly, maybe. But yeah, I mean, I know iTrent is a big system and a lot of people use it as well. So, but I think explaining what you can, what's available, how you do it, because we have had a few changes and.
I think I've seen an update. I would expect there just to be a crib sheet.
Yeah.
So does it exist? Yeah.
Yeah, there is.
Is it up to date?
I can happily prepare that. Yes.
Just that's all it needs. If we can't cope with that, then they come and ask for help. I really don't see it being a huge piece of work. We've got better things to do.
I agree. It shouldn't take long. I could potentially do it tomorrow and get it out to you.
Anything else on expenses and allowances at all? Peter, please.
I don't know how I'm fit, probably. Trent, I couldn't get on with it at all. And the last time I used it, I got told in the end, request denied. So I thought, I'm not bothered with it since then, to be honest.
I think that's the problem. It's hard to get on. Once you get onto it, it's intuitive, but actually getting onto the wretched thing, I gave up long ago.
Okay, are you okay with that one? Right. Moving on now, support for each other, and I think Leah was telling me earlier, there's been a lot of really good positive reaction to this.
That was a bit I loved from the survey. It was so nice to see like how the responses to the questions about helping each other. If somebody's away, somebody's ill, they've got something going on. It's overwhelmingly like, yes, absolutely, we will help each other in that situation. So that's really nice to see. The contentious bit about this area was about if councillors move away. And I think what I've been wrestling with is this member support, or is it just a general principle? And B, it's quite difficult. I've worked with councillors who maybe they live during the week in one place and weekends are at another, or they're going away to university, or they might have gone into military for a bit and they come back, or temporarily. They could easily have someone who normally lives in Market Harbour and is living in Desborough temporarily, and that's out the district. So it's a really difficult one I'm finding to actually articulate. So I'd be interested to know your views.
Can you just give us the law on that, the rules, if you can?
There is no rule. When you stand for election, you have to qualify. So that means that you must have been living in the area or worked in the area. So that's the thing, you can live outside the area and work within it, or owned a piece of land and licenses for the past 12 months. So as long as you meet the criteria at that point, it doesn't matter what happens once you are elected. You do not have to stand down.
By personal choice.
Chair, if I may, that's
yeah.
the national regulation law. Yeah. Is there anything to prevent the district council having a policy or a rule which require people to stand down if they are absent from the area for a significant period? And I use that word significant period because that has meaning in itself.
Do you want to answer that? Or can you answer it?
We can't force anyone. We have no rights to
Fine.
disqualify
Just want to
councillors.
understand the legality of whether there was that opportunity. Right.
Phil?
Okay.
Well, here's something up, but I mean, you can't make anyone stand down because they're qualified when they stood to get elected, and if they choose, and if circumstances change or for whatever reason, that's then down to them, and if they're part of a political group, down to their political group, and we, like yourself and other groups, have got rules that govern those sorts of things, so that's then down to them. I'm not sure that particular line in this recommendation 3, I think, is appropriate to be put in. I think members offering support to councillors who need additional help and support, well, we all do that through our groups and across that. And councillors should be expected to provide reasonable assistance to each other. Well, yes and no. I mean, I think that's kind of I think that everyone gets elected in different areas. It is by its very nature, there is a degree of adversarial situation. So, you're not necessarily going to get on 100% with everyone. You're all thrown together in a mixer. And if you can, then that's great. And if you don't, well, that's just life, isn't it? So I think we can offer members support when someone's particularly ill or someone's, suffered a family crisis of some form or another, then that's great. But I think to say that, if someone is working away or they're commuting backwards and forwards and they should, that's straying into the politics, I think, of things. And I'm not sure that's for the council to say. And also legally, we can't do it. So I think we shouldn't really say that.
I think what you actually say, not politics, but personal. In that it's straight into private life.
Yeah, and I think we're just getting involved in things that have got
Yeah.
nothing to do with us. So, if people choose not to do that, and there have been people, and it happens across the country, then, time is usually the thing that decides that. At the end of the day, the voters will have their say. So that's all you can say. And I don't think it's, I think that's more of a group situation, each political group. I mean, if you have a colleague who's not able to attend meetings for whatever reason, and there'd be all sorts of reasons for that, and over the years there have been, then that's put down to each group to resolve. It's not, starting to say the council will resolve it. Well, no, I don't think that's right.
Yeah, are we looking for the recommendation as written? Are we looking for a change of wording and to reflect our feeling here? Or is this something we leave to you?
It's interesting to get the sense of views in the room, because sort of what I've heard so far is that perhaps we just need to take that end bit out about if a councillor moves away. And then we talk more positively about the support we provide to each other.
Well, I think with the wording in front of me, I would suggest you put a full stop after support, capitalise with that, councillors should be expected, and then delete the rest, but add the word seek suitable support where necessary.
Everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine, okay.
If I may, the next area was training. Some people said it's good, we get what we need, and others said we don't. But equally, I'm very conscious some of that might link to attendance, because we have quite a mixed attendance at training at times, which is a shame. But the biggest theme that emerged was members felt they didn't know what was available to them. Since I saw that in the survey, I've been trying to make sure I regularly send round updates about LGA events, DCN events, other events. I probably need to do another one this week. And it's been nice to see a few councillors message me about, great, I went to this webinar or I attended that. So we are going to be looking at getting a member development group working again, possibly in about March time. So suggesting they delve deeper into this topic, but in the meantime, we continue to promote what's available.
Any comments? Everybody happy to leave that one? Okay, we'll move on to the next one, please, Leah.
That was straightforward. Health and wellbeing, hopefully this is fairly straightforward as well. Members generally indicated they weren't necessarily aware of what's available to them. So again, it might be about promotion, because sometimes it's not until you need additional support that you actually come looking for it. So I want to make sure members know that if they need help, it's there. I think there is an emerging recommendation the LGA are likely to put forward that all councils should ensure their councillors have access to their wellbeing providers they provide for staff, and we already do that. So we're ahead of the game there.
Comments, anybody? Phil, please.
Yeah, so again, I think this goes back to the thing about allowances and expenses. I think in a sense, members need to have the crib list of, right, this is, these are the things, this is the support that's available to you. Yes, it's on the intranet, but and obviously some of us have been here long enough to know this is available. But there are other things. So if I go back in 2 years ago, it used to be that councillors could get the staff discount for the leisure centre, and you could get a contribution to your eye tests. We're obviously using BDU. So, but these points are not, shall we say, universally known, and or how you're supposed to access this. So I think there is a bit of work that needs to be done there so that it is clear to everyone and people may or may not choose to take these up, and that's absolutely fine. But if that is available to people, then it needs to be very clear, instead of being buried on some layer of an intranet site to find out. And I mean, I don't even know how many councillors actually access that, but it is really important. And then also, I think the other thing is that, and that obviously no one, obviously people who have, physical or some form of disability or something like that, or long-term health condition and things like that. We have got counsellors with those things. I know that. They may or may not choose to seek support and help. And I think that's about making it clear to all counsellors that if you need reasonable adjustments or you need additional support, that who you go to, who do you go and approach?
What's the route?
Yeah, who do you come into? You don't want to go into X and then find you just want to know, right? And also I think for group leaders to know as well, to then say, right, councillor X, colleague, obviously you've got a bit of a problem, whatever. Why don't you go and speak? You need to go and speak to so and so to see if we can get you some additional. And I know that we've had over the years, we have supported a number of colleagues with additional needs, physical and others, and obviously it does vary quite a bit. So I think that's something we've been good at in patches, but not so good at other times. But you can only deal with if someone comes to you and says, I need some help. What can you do for me? But I think that then comes back to, you've got to say, who do you go and talk to? And of course, we've had a churnover of certain people. So I think it's really important because it does enable people to participate, and that's really important.
It's almost another one of you said, Clive, a few minutes ago. It's another crib sheet saying if you've got a problem, bum. It's listed down. Because you say, Phil, people don't ask, you don't know.
Absolutely. I think it should happen on induction. That you get the opening list and you go, yes, and you have that session where you go, have you seen the following? Keep that. That's your Bible. By the way, here it is on the internet. Where the live copy is. So you'll have to have non-controlled copy. I get involved in this question, but you have uncontrolled copies distributed on induction and updates on the internet, and then you do an annual update but don't create it as a cottage industry.
I'm getting the feeling here, because originally we were talking about member support policy, and then I've mentioned crib sheets, but actually it's sort of emerging into almost like help, I'm a member, what do I do, handbook.
It is,
And actually if we form something like that.
It's funny, we used to have.
We did, yes.
We did used to have a member handbook. But this and everything was in this handbook.
It's almost back to the old purple book. People used to come in and used to say, there you go.
Well,
it was in there.
Yeah, so that's in a way what the intranet should be like.
Yeah.
This should be the members' handbook of how to do things. How to get.
But I would.
I don't think it is. I think that's the problem.
I think the point that's coming around the group, I hope you get support from Michael here. The printed copy, hard copy, is actually necessary because not everybody goes to the internet first. If you look at the Good Counsellor Guide, that's your first reference, isn't it? You look at the Good Counsellor Guide. Oh, it's not in there. Then you come and ask.
Anybody else would have raised hands on that? Yeah, Peter, please.
I just want to say that I think, Leo, can you get something sorted out about handbook or look into it?
It's a really tricky one because a lot of councils stopped doing it because a lot of the time their handbooks for councils were like lists of contact names and numbers and things. So I do get that's really handy, but it changes as soon as it's published. So it can be a bit frustrating, and this feels a little bit deeper than that. Yeah.
Rather than a person.
Rather than a person. Yeah. So, and that's the thing I was going to come on to, that effectively this feels a little bit different. It feels more about how you do your role, exactly that. So that live information that needs to change regularly, that's why it's better to have it on intranets and things, but it's more about a role. Paper's always really difficult for me. I mean, it's unusual I'm sitting here with a paper agenda. I don't know how I've quite got one, but we do have carbon targets and carbon reduction and things, and every time we use paper, it contributes to that. So it's a dilemma.
Just hang on, Phil. Miranda, do you want to come in first, mate?
I was going to say that none of this is on the intranet.
Yeah.
Is it? So I mean, if it's on the intranet, you can print it out yourself. There's no problem with that. We've got access to the printers here.
Yeah.
But I think
Well-
this should all be on the internet now.
Yeah, well, we have, if we know how to actually do, because I tried using the printer the other day and it doesn't recognise my card anymore. So I think these are all, so there are points here, and I think, yes, I can spend half an hour looking for it on the internet, but actually, if I just have a little guidebook, this is how you need to do it. This is who you need to go. This is the person, not the role holder you need to contact. But I think just going back to what we were just talking about paper guys. So we did have a councillor who's no longer on the council who did need to have everything in very large print. I'm not going to name names, but they did have to have everything because they had an eye condition, and it was actually quite challenging. As I'm sure Sarah's looking at me, because of the screen size, and it was really challenging to get everything up to the size that they needed to view, and actually made their participation in some of the meetings quite difficult. And I'm not sure. I mean, we did our best, but I think we need to learn from things like that as well.
Yeah.
I think the tools for doing some of that are also improving all the time, which does help. And a really good example of that is AI, which is really, really helpful for counsellors with things like dyslexia. But more generally, it can be helpful too. But it does feel to me that we're shaping up into here some form of guidebook. It's available online. As you say, counsellors can print it, or if I've got counsellors that have a reason to have it printed differently or in a different form to accommodate accessibility, we can absolutely do that. I think that's where we're headed towards.
Everybody happy with that? Exactly. I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, right, okay. Move on now to the next item, which is communications.
I think we've just jumped over six,
We jumped over
which is about
Recommendation six.
diversity.
Sorry, we have.
And essentially, I'm saying it'd be helpful if we saw what the LGA might be doing in this space first, because I think they are doing some work in this area, and then we can look at what they're recommending and adopt that.
Okay,
And then equipment, actually, members indicate they're quite happy with what we provide right now, so proposing no change to that.
apologies for that. Communication?
And communication, I do realise, was an area perhaps omitted from the survey and actually came out through some of the feedback and some of the other general feedback I've been having from other meetings with members. And there's this too little, not enough, constant dilemma going on. And I know some people are quite scared of their inboxes at times because we've sent 20 odd emails. But equally, if we don't tell you about those things, then there'll be someone saying, I didn't know. So, you know, if you think there are ways that we can change that or make it more helpful to you, then absolutely we can look at that.
Anybody want to make any comment on communications? No? Phil, yeah, go on.
So I think obviously we do receive quite a lot of communications, that's true. And so the first thing I want to say, this month in here, it says monthly councillor newsletter. It's not a monthly councillor newsletter. We get a monthly councillor newsletter from the LPA, but the monthly councillor newsletter from the council is now quarterly. No, it's one, it's every, no, it's quarterly. No, it's quarterly updates. Yeah, it's been quarterly for about a year, I think. I'm personally not sure that's the right frequency. I do think it needs to be monthly. We're getting information. I think there's an issue with information flow. Councils, you know, we information flow is absolutely crucial. And I think one of the challenges at the moment is there's a lot of information being imparted in things like the Cabinet Information Exchange verbally, which, okay, if I choose to watch that, that's great. But if I don't choose to watch
I mean, you
that,
don't, Phil.
I do, of course.
Another bill, you're watching it.
But if I'm a councillor, you know, 34, you know, lots of other councillors who don't watch that. I'm not saying I do or don't, but that what I'm making the point is that is a lot of information is put into that meeting. Okay, rightly or wrong, you know, I'm not knocking that, but the point is it takes some time for that information to permeate down to all the members until they actually can see what was actually said, because it's verbal and they've actually either got to be on the meeting or look at the recording afterwards. Just about recording, I think what we've done with that, putting them on YouTube, is excellent, and that's really good, and that's a massive improvement on having that instead of having Teams recordings. So I think that's a really good thing. But in terms of that, I don't think that works. I'm not going to be critical about the chief executive's weekly update, but I do. But I do think I have made comments to him about it. I'm not sure he's. Personally, I think it's too personal. I think it should be more about business. Yeah, I can just put it like that. And the weekly roundups and other stuff, I think to me they're quite helpful. But I think the only thing we've done, I don't think is as effective as is this quarterly member update. I do think we should go back to monthly. Because I think it's too long. Because some of the things it's talking about happened 3 months ago, and you're kind of like, so what? You know, and it's not timely enough for anything that's coming up in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely no problem with that at all.
So I was just saying to Councillor Knowles, because I appreciate their cabinet documents, but the information exchanges, you've usually prepared briefing notes that you read out. And so actually we could share those with members fairly quickly after the meeting. It'd be helpful. I know it's another document, but it's an easy way to get that information quickly for those who want it.
In some respects, it's quicker to read that than it is to watch it on screen. But you know, because what is it, 40 minutes, 45 minutes it takes, which, you know, okay, but it's sometimes quicker to read them.
There's no problem with mine, so I think it's just a simple thing that when we're doing the bits and pieces of the minutes of the cabinet meetings, to send out the copy of the individual information exchange, because there's a load of stuff in there. And if it's being missed, it's important information. I think why not? It's being shared properly. Why not?
What I'm looking for, Chair, is a distillation of the meeting to the right level.
Yeah,
We don't have time to go through every meeting.
yeah, I accept that as well. We'll have a look at that there. Okay.
So I'm not saying this would have the capacity to do this here, but I mean, for example, at county, they've got this thing called a democratic update that they send out every week. And obviously it's much bigger beast, but they send this thing out every week to all the members about all sorts of stuff. Some of which you know about, and some of which you might not know about. But there is even more, you know, information. But again, I'm not suggesting that, because it is quite intensive to do that. But it's just trying to kind of capture all the kind of information that members might need to know each week about what's going on.
I think we picked up taking the cabinet for and sort some way out to get it condensed, but at a level where all the information's coming out once.
I think I'm very mindful that I've mentioned LGR. There'll be some of you might get involved in committees and things when they start to get going. Some of people might be on the shadow in this. We're going to need to find ways to try and simplify things getting to you, because you've only got so much capacity.
Fine. Everybody happy with all of that being collated, pulled together, taken to cabinet, and then obviously it'll be distributed accordingly from there. Okay, we'll move on now to where are we? Just looking for that now. There we are. Moving on now to page 10, which is the comparative policy and approaches. Okay.
Yeah, I just pulled a few examples because I know that was requested, and actually it's very, very few in the country that do this. If you have clicked on the links, you'll see a bit more. And I think that councillor compact, I know you mentioned it, Councillor Burrell, that Durham do, it sort of almost feels a bit like what we've spoken about earlier in terms of that handback, and really trying to spell out what you're expected to do and then what we support you to do that. I think we can try and take that sort of approach into the document as we move forward. I've mentioned Cornwall have a case management system, and we have a member inquiry system. I think in general, we're reasonably good at making sure they're turned around, and certainly my team are chasing if people don't turn them around quickly. If you do go down the road of a case management system, it does cost money and we need a business case for it.
Okay, anybody want to comment on that? Or everybody happy? Okay, well, we'll pull all of that together. We'll get it pulled through to cabinet and then take it on. So we now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 5, council procedure rules, questions 17 to 42, page 17. I think basically, I mean, I'll just make an opening statement. I mean, we did have an exception to the norm. I mean, normally we do put things in writing. I'm quite comfortable with it being in writing. There's always going to be exceptions. I think we all know that. So again, I know it's something that we can happily look at. And as I say, normally anybody puts a question, they get an answer in writing. And I think that's absolutely the right and important thing to do. Are there going to be exceptions? I've just said there probably will be. There almost certainly will be exceptions. If we're going to look at it, you know, I'm sure that there'll be other authorities up and down the country there who are doing umpteen different things. But I think I'm correct in saying that everything we've done thus far over the last 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years has all been done within the rules and regulations. Yeah, do you want to come in at all?
So this paper follows on from the last council meeting where I know there were some concerns raised about how questions from members were dealt with at the time, because it was different to normal in that they were answered on the evening rather than in writing in advance of the meeting. And it does make it a little bit more tricky for members trying to think what supplemental question is. But equally, there's nothing wrong with that because these are your rules. There are no laws governing this area of council business. It's good practice to have processes and procedures, makes things clear, but what you want to do is up to you. And so if you have any specific proposals, you want to recommend things, then happy to look at that and take the view of the meeting today.
Yeah, well, thanks for putting this on the agenda after that meeting. I think the concern we have is that I've listened to what you've said, but however, at the meeting, it was, you know, members hadn't been given a written response in advance. So that meant they weren't able to formulate an appropriate supplementary question, which is their right to ask. And I think that was discourteous, to be frank. And I think that's not the way, you know, well, since I've been on this council since 2007, we've never done it like that. So I think to suddenly renege on custom and practice and to suddenly go down this other route, which it might be legal, but it's not how how things are being done. And I think we've either got to have agreement that that isn't going to be done again, or we're going to have to change the rules so that it's embedded into the rules that people do receive a written response in advance of the meeting so that they can formulate a supplementary, because, you know, that's important. It is their right. We enable that. But you're not going to be able to do that if you then, you know, you have to read out the question, which again, not quite sure why we need that to happen. And then, you know, because we only allocate 15 minutes for this in the agenda, and you know, read out the question, then someone has to read out the answer, and then someone has to think, well, do I really want to answer it? You know, do I have a supplementary? So it's I think it is problematic if we're going to go down that route, and certainly we are not happy about that, and that's why we wanted it on the agenda, and we want to resolve this if we can positively, so that everyone's happy. I think it's in everyone's interest to have written responses. It's in everyone's interest for, you know, the democratic process to be adhered to, and, you know, we have custom and practice. And the reason we have it is because people have worked out over years, not just in the last few years, but years before that, that this is the thing that works. Now, if we need to incorporate that into the rules, so be it. I'm quite happy to propose we do that. But what part of the rules we would need to change to do that, I'm not entirely familiar with. So we need a little bit of a steer, but that's where I am. Thank you, Liam.
I think the simple answer is, as far as I'm concerned, it is the normal practice to give written responses. Absolutely no problem with that. And I'm happy that that should continue, and it definitely should continue in my view. There were exceptional circumstances at play that night. And unfortunately, I think whatever we put in place in future, there's always going to be an exceptional circumstance that might come up in a month, a year or 2 years. I don't quite know how we would quantify or cover that in the rules, other than to say, and I'm saying this absolutely genuinely, I'm very happy to say, in my view, there should definitely be written replies. And I'm more than happy with that.
So if there are exceptional circumstances, then to be frank, that needs communicating before the meeting to the people who've asked questions, which on this occasion, as I understand, that didn't happen. There was no communication. They didn't know what was going on. No one communicated. And I think, you know, if that's going to happen, then, you know, do accept that things can happen, things can go wrong. But that needs communicating. And there was no communications about this.
That won't happen again. There will be.
I'll take your word for that.
Thank you, Phil. That's absolutely fine.
But we need to embed this in to make sure everyone's clear about how this works and there's no ambiguity. Thank you.
So if you want to do that, then I would suggest a recommendation would be to remove 4.1.33.1 of the council procedure rules. That's on page 28.
Yeah.
And it's towards the bottom. It says 4.1.33.1 is the bit that allows councillors to give a direct oral answer at the meeting lasting no more than 5 minutes. So you'd remove that element. I have in the report suggested 2 caveats that you would need to add. The first of which is to allow a verbal response where an urgent question is asked. So an urgent question is submitted the day before, and so you might not have that same time to prepare a robust written answer before the meeting. So that would be an exception. And the other bit would be to allow a member to indicate they wish to provide a verbal update where there's been a change in the situation since the written response was provided, which I think would probably be helpful for councillors that ask the question. So you'd be removing 4.1.33.1. So you'd be removing the ability of the councillor to whom a question is put to give a direct oral answer lasting no more than 5 minutes. So,
removing completely the verbal response to a question.
Except to allow a verbal response where it's an urgent question. And secondly, to allow a member to give a verbal update where something's changed since the written response was drafted.
To clarify, just make sure we're all.
Where have you written that?
Oh, sorry, I'm referring back to the bottom of page 18 on your agenda.
That's page 28 on one.
Yeah, so 28 covers the council procedure rules.
Yeah.
18 is where I've put those 2 potential caveats if you remove 4.1.33.1.
So what we're saying is, just for an example, somebody asks a question and we don't answer it verbally.
Yeah.
We just say, you've got your answer in writing.
Yeah.
And then the secondary question or supplemental question is then asked verbally, and then you've got to answer that one verbally. Or are you saying that your recommendation covers that one to be answered?
If it's a supplemental, it can be given, it can still be responded to orally in the meeting because it's only given in the meeting, or it can be that the councillor says, no, I need to go away and think, I'll give you a written response. That doesn't change.
Okay, fine.
Just for my understanding, for me, what's the definition of urgent?
That is somewhere within these procedure rules, if you just give me a moment. Okay, so that is on page 30. A councillor may ask a question if they've given notice previously, or it relates to urgent matters. They then need to get the consent of the chairman or councillor to whom the question is being put, and the content is for democratic services no later than noon on the working day prior to the meeting.
Okay. So again, no problem for me either way. I mean, if you want to do it that way and remove any verbal response on the original question, then, but either way, we'll just take it to cabinet and say that's what we want to do. I mean, I suppose there is an element of time saving doing it that way, because what you're getting then is that councillor A asks the question, we just have to ask it because it's been submitted. Councillor B, who's responding, doesn't have to respond because they've already got it. So I just wonder how you're going to get that onto the appropriate level of it being on the agenda and people being aware of it. I'm just trying to.
So I think what we're trying to do here is reflect what customer practice is, and I'm not sure that will, because I think there are going to be circumstances where you do need to give a oral answer. But I accept that, but I think what's concerning is if we're going to change customer practice, and I'll go back to what I said, it was just enunciated, we're doing it like this now. There was no forewarning, no heads up, we're going to change this, we're going to do it like this at this meeting, or as the leader said, exceptional circumstances, yet no communications to anyone to say, but because of exceptional circumstances.
But I think the bottom line is still, I think this needs to be clarified, it was within the rules. So what we're saying is, if you want to change the rules, no problem, let's put them on the table and let's just address them. If you're happy to accept it was an exceptional circumstance, and you've got my absolute backing that it was an exceptional circumstance, and in future there should definitely be, written responses because they're important. Again, absolutely, for me, I'm happy to support that 110%. Where you go down to the next level is if you're going to change the rules and you go down the route that's been indicated, one of the implications of that is that you're suddenly removing the verbal asking of the question. You're removing the verbal response. I'm just trying to.
No.
I don't think it's too efficient.
I can find a navigation through this. I very much like the point that Councillor King is making here. It's about the communication ahead of the meeting.
Yeah.
If we were to add a rule, for want of a better word, that says in the event that a written response cannot be provided in time, that this will be communicated ahead of the meeting, so that we are then going to take a look at the verbal route, because
I think that
you don't want to lose the opportunity to get some sort of response by completely negating that option. But we want communication to say, actually, I'm not going to have time to get this right, but I'm going to give you the best I can at the time.
my reaction to that is I think that covers it, because what that's saying is that you're adding in a safety belt or an assurance that if you're not going to get a written response, you're going to know about it.
Yes, I think that's the thing. So colleagues didn't know.
I'm quite happy with that.
That's my recommendation.
Perfect. So if you're happy with that, we'll take that back to cabinet now and try and work out with the officers an appropriate timing so that we can come back and say, right, that afternoon, or at least 6 hours before the meeting or whatever it is, and come back and say genuinely, this is the suggestion.
Yeah,
Unless
I mean,
tell me
just put my other hat on for a moment with the other council. Written responses are supplied to questions. I think it's by 12 noon. Well, obviously they're afternoon meetings, so you get the written response by 12 noon with meetings at 2 o'clock. Okay.
So if we say 4:30,
I'm just, and then if someone gets the written response, but they have something called an order paper for the running of the meeting, which is slightly different to us. So what then happens is you then have that's then in the order paper, which is a supplementary. And then if someone wants to ask a supplementary question, the chair then says, Councillor X, have you got a supplementary to question 1? And the person will then say yay or nay. Or quite often it's nay, but sometimes they do. And then the lead member has to then, or the leader will then rise to answer that question verbally. So yes, it is. So that seems to work quite well. But whether, again, we've got the ability to do some, I don't think we have. But so we've got to, because it's a capacity thing. So the question then is, what's the best way we can make this? And I think what happened in the December meeting is not the right way, I don't think. We need to either we know we're getting a written response before the meeting, someone's got a chance to read it, digest what it means, and then think, I want to ask an extra question. I'll do that.
What about if we use the same similar timelines and say that written responses under normal circumstances would be provided by 4:30 on the afternoon, which is 2 hours before the meeting, in writing, and that any variance on the and any inability to provide a written response will be notified immediately to the member who put the question in. Because otherwise, I don't. Obviously, we don't meet until 6:30. Some of the questions that this are being worked on until the last minute. So we can't sort of say, well, you get it the day before.
No, I accept that.
Yeah.
I'd accept that.
I think sadly, I think you could, and those cases where you're not going to achieve that, just say so. And just say, we still need time to work on this,
Mhm.
and therefore I'll give you a short written, and then it will be followed. But it's the communication. I take the point. Yeah, Phil.
I mean, I think the emphasis
That
again is
communication, know what's going on.
the
is the
emphasis
key
is
part.
there were no rules that were broken. It was within the rules, but I understand the need for clarification. Absolutely not an issue. More than happy to support it this way. I think the only thing is about the timings. I mean, are you happy we take it back?
I
Get
think you
somebody
need
from
to
the
come-
officers.
Yeah, I think Phil, you need to, and Leah, you need to take it away and
Okay.
come back with this was what will be able to
To
work.
work with.
And
Okay.
what, because at the end of the day, what will work and won't work.
Okay. Thank you.
Rather than us imposing something on you now,
Okay.
which would be unrealistic.
That's perfect. Well, we'll leave it at that then, and we'll
But
address
I
that.
stand on my recommendation about the safety valve, but make that communication, add that.
Yeah, we'll pick that up later tomorrow and then get it taken to cabinet on Monday.
On Monday.
Not Monday, well, we can. Any other business we got it? This is an urgent item. You're telling me we
It's
can't?
not,
Well,
it's not key decisions. So in theory, we could get it in there with some wording that it gets circulated. And then obviously it's a constitution change, so it needs to go to council, which we can get to the next council in February. I do have some potential draft wording I've just been sketching out here, so I think it should be straightforward to get something.
We'll talk about do tomorrow then. Everybody happy with that? Anything else anybody else wants to raise? No? Well, I think that is, I'm right. The last item on the agenda. So I will declare the meeting closed. Thanks, everybody.